Garth, this was very interesting. And I think this is probably going to be one of the most controversial segments that we have done on this show because it's regarding the shootout, which people either absolutely love or hate with very little in between. And this is coming from Wayne Gretzky. So, it's not some random guy. This is the greatest hockey player to ever play the game. On a segment on the show Face Off, as part of TNT's NHL coverage, Wayne Gretzky proposed the idea of a shot clock for shootout attempts. This has come in response to complaints about some shooters, most notably Caps forward Evgeny Kuznetsov, taking way too long to go through their shootout routines. Gretzky, in talking about if someone did what Kuznetsov is doing back when he played, he says, and quote, 20 guys on the other team would have jumped over the boards, and if someone would have done it against us, 20 guys on our team would jump over the boards. You got to protect the goalie's right. And he basically says, if you need 8 or 9 seconds to take a shootout shot, you don't deserve to be taking it, is essentially his point. Now, I want to get into this. This is a very multi-layered thing we're about to discuss, Garth. But before I do that, I do want to show something. I think it's important to display what Mr. Gretzky is actually talking about, because it's one thing to say, oh, Wayne Gretzky says this, but I would actually like to play a short clip of Evgeny Kuznetsov's shootout routine so people can kind of get an idea of what he's talking about. Now, the first thing I want to point out before I do play this video, Kuznetsov is very good in the face-off, the shootout, which I think is why some people are bringing this up, because it's very hard for goalies to stop what he does, but it's not impossible. So I'm just going to play one example. I don't have to play them all because they're pretty much the exact same, but we'll just see what he does here on the shootout. All right. So now that we have an idea of what Gretzky is actually talking about here, we're going to get into our opinions on this, our thoughts on Wayne Gretzky's comments on not only Kuznetsov, Garth, but the proposal of the shot clock for the shootout. We'll start with you on this one. What were your thoughts when you were reading this?
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least, because I can kind of see both sides of this argument. This is one where I'm kind of split right down the middle on it. Honestly, I'm not like leaning really strongly towards one side or the other of this argument. Because like you said, it's not like he's doing something that's completely unstoppable. I think it's just that it's so unorthodox and so like long and drawn out when you usually see these guys take really quick attempts that it's, everybody's up in arms because they're like, wait a second, that's not what we're used to seeing. And it's working really well. This doesn't make any sense. Why is this guy allowed to do this? But, and I'm no hockey expert as far as how to play the game by any means. But one thing that I would personally say watching that and watching, being fortunate to watch a really good goaltender for many years now, and a guy like Andrei Vasilevsky is, and one guy your favorite, well, one of your favorite goaltenders now was very, very good at and has become known for, is something called the poke check. When this guy starts to get a little bit closer to the net, especially when this is what he's going to do almost every single time, you can just come out of the net a little bit and try and poke that puck away. It's not like the goaltender has to stay in the crease and can't come out at all. They have every ability to come out of the net. Hell, he could even skate right towards him at the start of it. Granted, it would be unorthodox and maybe not the best idea, but physically, if they wanted to, they are able to do that. And then on the other side of things with Wayne Gretzky, his comments proposing a shootout clock, the thing for me, Noah, is I guess it would make sense to kind of speed this up. But it's not like you're seeing this all the time, like multiple players across multiple teams doing this. It's literally just one guy. Do we really need to implement a shot clock for one single guy would be my kind of my question. And also too, keep in mind the sport has changed so much since he's played. Obviously it's still very physical. There's fighting, there's big hits, but at least from what I've gone back and watched of some more older vintage hockey, like full-on brawls, clearing of benches was like way more common back then. You don't see it hardly as much anymore. So, I think he's speaking a little bit from like my playing days instead of, this is what would happen nowadays. But like I said, no, I think I can see both sides of this. And maybe only really need a shot clock if like more players start doing this and it's more than just one guy.
Ray says Buffalo is up 1-0. I have to be honest, I thought Gretzky was going to come down harder on the shootout. And then Ray follows it up by saying, just get rid of this stupid thing already. Go to 3-on-3 for 10 minutes. If nothing, game ends in a tie. 2-0 New Jersey. Absolutely fantastic to hear that, Ray. But yeah, in regards to this whole thing, first thing I want to say is this. The most important thing I think we should remember is, number one, by the rules the NHL has, what Evgeny Kuznetsov does is 100% legal. All you have to do is go forward. Your body and the puck have to be moving forward at all times. If the puck ever goes backwards or you go backwards or sideways, your attempt is blown dead and it's over. So by the rules, what he's doing is perfectly fine. Now, as for, if I think his routine is weird or whatnot, it's definitely unorthodox, I'd say. I think, like you said, Garth, the main thing is that this is really unique with him. He's the one that when Gretzky was talking about this, he instantly pointed him out. And, that video I just showed, that was from January, Garth. And it was, multiple minutes. So this is not something new that's just recently come up. This is something that has been associated with him for a while. And I mean, 24 of 56 on shootout attempts. So it's very effective. And then one part that Gretzky brought up was, is it fair to goalies for him to be able to do something like this? Now, see, this is where it gets a bit controversial because I don't think I've ever said on the show my opinion on the shootout, because usually we're just more focused on just normal reporting. This is what's happening. We'll give our take on it. But when you start talking about the shootout and you give your opinion on it, that's one of those things that NHL fans will get livid about and start rioting or whatnot if they disagree with your opinion. In my opinion, I do not like the shootout, and here's why. I think it's a gimmick. I understand why they do it, because you don't want to have triple overtime games in the regular season when you have back-to-backs or 2 games in 3 days. However, it's kind of like the penalty shootout in.
John's fired up about the shootout.
Yeah, hey, Rufus hates the shootout too, apparently. But it's kind of like the penalty shootout in soccer, right? Where a team plays 120 minutes, the score is still tied or whatever, and they go to a penalty shootout. The reason I don't mind that as much for a sport like soccer is that it's much more lower scoring. I mean, you have games where teams can go 90 minutes and it's still 0-0 by the end. And another difference is soccer has draws, Garth. They do not, there's not a winner every single game. They're perfectly fine with, at the end of, full time or whatever, if it's 1-1, they'll just give a point to each team and move on to the next game. Whereas with hockey, they have this obsession, since they put in the shootout, they want every game to be decided with a winner. In my opinion, I prefer the overtime format. I'm not saying 5-on-5. That should be specifically reserved for the playoffs. But in regular season, my preferred tiebreaker would be, I think, kind of like what Ray said, maybe like a 7 to 10 minute 3-on-3 overtime. If it still scores at the end of it, which, by the way, is incredibly unlikely, then you could just do a tie. I think give each team, 1 point or whatever. But I don't know. I've never personally liked the shootout. I don't mind watching the shootout, but I've always had this feeling, right? Once the game gets past overtime and it gets to shootout, it's just like, not really interested. We'll see who gets that extra point, but it's just like, can we just get this game, over with by this point? All the hockey's been played pretty much. Whereas if it was like a 10-minute 3-on-3, I think it'd be more exciting. And I think first of all, 3-on-3 is very exciting to watch. And the chance of scoring on that is very high. So I don't think you'll even see a lot of ties if that was the format. But yeah, regardless, do I think the NHL will ever put in a shot clock? It's not impossible. I never thought baseball would put in a pitch clock, and they did. So, but I don't think it's at the top of the docket for the NHL right now. I will say that. I do understand where Gretzky's coming from. Obviously, he's talking from a perspective of a guy who played in the 80s, where it was much more physical and whatnot. And obviously, they didn't have the shootout back then. It came, I think, after the lockout in 04, 05, something like that. Before that, they did have ties. So we'll see what happens. But, Yeah, it's definitely an interesting routine that Kuznetsov has. You know, he uses every little bit of time he has. It's honestly crazy to see someone skate that slow. But regardless, we'll see what happens. I personally don't really care either way or whatnot if they put a shot clock or not, because I'm never too interested in the shootout anyway. Obviously, that's just my opinion. But yeah, we'll see what happens. The NHL has consistently changed their tiebreaker format over the decades. They might do it again. Who knows? But regardless, some more comments coming in. Hey, keep doing it, Ray. We need these updates. These are absolutely crucial, man, and we're focused on too much of the show to often check. It's not like he's changing the shootout. Marty changed the game by playing the puck, and you saw the trapezoid come out of it. Very good point. Yep. The trapezoid rule was made because of Marty Brodeur, and honestly, another take, I don't think the trapezoid should even exist. I mean, Marty Brodeur was an exception. He shouldn't, he was so good that he transcended the game and how the position was played. And they made a rule because of how good he was at doing it. I don't know. I never personally liked that. But yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think Kuznetsov with the shootout is comparable to that by any means.